Hello, lovely listeners. You're welcome back to the Progressive Mind Show on WGHC 98.3 FM. We are happy that you are with us tonight, and we are also happy that you will be helping this conversation a successful one. We are talking about Africa, and we're talking about our our own president of the United States of America, the 45th president in the person of Donald Trump. He has obviously started his tenure in office. It's 100 days already. I think that was a week or two ago that he chalked his 100 days. And it's interesting, some of his executive orders, how it's impacting the whole world actually, and how people of the world are reacting to his policies and some of his executive orders. Well, Africa has now been no exclusion of his executive orders. We have also felt a pinch of some of his policies, and we are going to be going to some of them, the details, and Dr. King is here. Dr. Margaret King is here to help us. Welcome to Progressive Minds and on WGHC 98.3 FM, Dr. King.
It is my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. How do you like our place?
It's lovely.
Right.
I mean, it's a happy that
Yeah.
I didn't quite know about. It's a great source of disseminating information, and we love it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know when we spoke, and I told you about it. Obviously, you had not come here before, but having seen it, I know that greater things are yet to come with what we've started.
Greater things are yet to come.
Absolutely.
I agree with you.
With Dr. Margaret King in the boots, we have no fears.
Oh, we got in that boat. You can smile in the storm. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I hope your drive here was smooth.
It was fantastic.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Can you please tell us in a few minutes? Dr. Margaret King is very popular. You know, anytime I come across people and I'm trying to talk to them and I'm trying to let them know what show we have. Oh, Dr. Margaret King, I know her. So why are you so popular in the African community?
I would have said popular. Thank you for that introduction. But our interest is to support our people,
Okay.
To encourage them in their different endeavors, to make them have a better quality of life. So I wouldn't say I'm popular,
Okay.
but that's what God has placed in our hearts, and we find it as a mission, we find it as a duty to take our people from point A to B and maybe all the way to Z.
Right, absolutely. So tell us more about yourself. I know you are a professor at Chicago State University, and you are also the coordinator for the international studies, right? You're also the founder of the Global Institute. Please tell us more about it. Go into details. Let's know exactly.
Well, I teach at Chicago State University.
Okay.
I do. I've been blessed with the ability to teach interdisciplinary. And so I do economics, and in the geography department, quite a bit in globalization, urban planning, and of course, I didn't mention economics. But international studies is the area that I currently teach in, and I direct the program, coordinate all facets of the program. Based on my experience, having been affiliated with Chicago State University for about 27 years now, can't believe it.
Wow.
But experiencing what the needs of the students are, I realized that there is a greater need in having an open mind, knowing beyond the south side of Chicago, and of course, past Chicago and the nation into other nations globally. And so I design my classes to make sure I teach to open up students' mind so that they're not just myopic, but they are open to the rest of the world. Otherwise, we can sing the song, "We Are the World," but you can't compare, the rest of the world unless you know it. The need came after doing much research for many years. We realized only the students that were taking my classes were that open to know the rest of the world. So we wanted to open up to the rest of the students.
Right.
And that's how the Global Institute gets started
Okay.
after the research and all that.
Oh.
So that's in one aspect.
Right.
I'm not sure how far you want me to go.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
before then, of course, we started the Metrocon International, which is a consulting firm into local economic development, community planning, and then of course we went to international development. So we work with different government entities, NGOs, non-profit organizations, faith-based groups, and assist them with all kinds of planning and development. It was doing that I was also teaching, sort of part-time, but students love it because you're not teaching them textbook knowledge. You are teaching them practical, you know, and so they got excited. They actually campaigned, and I was a chairperson, that they wanted me to teach more classes, and so the chair called me and said, could you take this job full-time? And so that's how I got into teaching more full-time. But they said, oh, we'll still allow you time to do your consulting business. But sometimes it's difficult when you have to teach 4 classes per semester and all that. But that's what we do, try to help the students. And prior to that, based on the need, when we realized studying my PhD program, you know, with the intent to make yourself more marketable in different parts of the world, and also, of course, in Africa, where we originated. And so we realized that urban planning or economic development was more focused in the USA. But we wanted to be able to transfer the technology to be able to help out in African countries. And we had quite a few women in the program, African women. And so I'm like, can you see what I'm seeing? Everybody felt the same way. So decided to create Economic Recovery Institute, and with it has a component of Women for African Development, so we can actually learn and do development here with an intent of being able to do it in Africa as well. So we have all those going, and as God will help us, and we enjoy it as a ministry, you know, as we try to, you know, work at, you know, church to help out.
Right, absolutely. So listeners, that's Dr. King for you. Before, I know that you did some work for the community through the Global Institute, and I'm not sure if it's Global Institute or Metrocon. I know you did some work on the South Side. Before we go into that, we know you're also happily married, and you've been married for over 28 years.
Absolutely.
That's true, correct?
Yeah, love it.
That is great. That is awesome. And you have 2 beautiful daughters.
I have a daughter and a son.
And a son, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a daughter. My son is about 27.
Wow.
And my daughter is 23.
Excellent. Excellent. So listeners, if you want to join in this conversation, we'll be opening the phone lines after 9 p.m. During the show, actually, we will also be talking to attorney Melanie Dennis, who would specifically tell us about some of the immigration executive laws that executive orders that President Donald Trump has enacted so far, what they are, who they are affecting actually, and should we even worry about it, because it's all over the place. People are, oh, he's going to do this, he's doing this with this immigration law. We'll get into the bottom of it. And so if you are watching us live on the Facebook feed, please remember to share it so your friends can also yes, Dr. King, come closer so that my viewers can see you. Yes, thank you. So please remember to share the feed. That way, our friends and our loved ones can also join in the conversation, and they can also hear what we're discussing today, so they can also participate if they want to. We would. So, Dr. King, you know, the president has, you know, obviously started his tenure, and he's done a couple of things. You know, he has shaken the international community by some of his utterances, some of his executive orders, some of his policies. We know that the American foreign policy is based on the international trade order, international law, and the security framework, right? Now, we can say that the foundations of these segments that I mentioned have been shaken by, again, some of his actions, some of his utterances, and some of his orders, executive orders. We know that when it comes to Africa, he contacted President Buhari, who was the Nigerian president, and had discussions about how he wants to send some aircraft to help the Nigerian government in fighting Boko Haram. He also called President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya and spoke to him about how they can expand trade investments and have bilateral trade and stuff, right? He also spoke with the president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, all in the same vein, all in the effort of trying to expand trade investment and having bilateral corporations and so forth. Now, do you think that these are the right direction? Do you think that even though he's had his conversations, think that he's going to follow through? And what are some of the specifics that you would want him to look at and allocate resources to help Africa?
I know we are in the age of globalization, and we cannot deny it.
Right.
All right? And...
Okay. Right.
All right?
Yeah, you okay.
We are in the age of globalization, and we cannot deny it.
Right.
One of the first things I learned in college is that man is gregarious by nature.
Okay.
And so I got into this political science class, and I had a professor that came from Britain. And he was like really, really fast with the way he was talking, and I could not quite understand him. But I had him to spell the word, and I got into knowing the meaning that man is not an island. Okay? Man cannot stand alone. And the same thing with a country. Yes, we can promote nationalism, but we are in an age that we are interdependent. And so in terms of, I do believe that charity begins at home. We need to protect our home, but at the same time, we cannot do well in the USA without working with other countries. And so the issue of trade becomes very important. So with those calls, I do applaud President Trump for making those calls. But I also understand that we need to do beyond that to cultivate these relationships and be positive about other countries, and of course very respectful. We are not the same, we are different, we have different cultures, but we do need to respect one another and also promote a relationship that can encourage trade. Africa does not necessarily need AIDS. Yes, it will impact. The cutting down of AIDS will impact. But we can look at it negatively, or we can look at it positively. We need to work in collaboration. The calls made out, I believe, is reaching out for collaborations. But I also believe we need to do more, because global terrorism, we cannot fight it alone. We need their allies, of different countries. I mean, there was an issue of NATO, not necessarily African related, but it's still a global force that, was said to be absolute, but he did correct that. Knowing that we all need to work one with another in a cooperative manner. So asking Buhari that he will send some plans to help out, I believe is a good move, because when we work together, we can overcome Boko Haram. I do understand lately, I believe I heard it 2 days ago or so, that about 80 of the 270-something young women that were captured from Chibok, the college, the high school there, were recovered. But we still need to do more to get all of them and promote stability, because stability outside of the U.S. is beneficial for U.S. interests.
Absolutely. And so, in essence, the U.S. government have aided the Nigerian government in recapturing some of these young girls that were captured by Boko Haram.
I believe
that was
right, but the point that I'm really making is, by working with other countries does not necessarily mean that we are helping those countries. We are also helping the USA. Because if we allow the expansion of whether Boko Haram or ISIS or all of these terrorism networks, we're not going to be at peace either. So by working with those countries, or trying to even go alone, we're going to deplete our resources in the U.S. so fast that we cannot handle these issues all over the world by ourselves. So we need to collaborate and work with each other.
Which segments in the global Africa economy that you would wish, if you were the secretary to the president, that you would like to lobby him to invest in directly?
Directly, I believe trade. That's the main thing. And when I talk about global Africa or global African, I mean people of African descent, whether you are in the diaspora or whether you are in the continent.
Right.
People of African heritage, we need to start first, even here in the USA, taking care of our own black communities.
Absolutely.
All right? And because charity begins at home. We realize that even many in Africa are looking towards the US as leading. And so if our black neighborhoods are not doing well, how are the people that are looking up to us expect to do better than the people in the U.S.? And so by doing that, I've seen the good thing that President Trump did was the 10-point agenda for black people. I do not quite remember a president that had that. So there may be some issues we talk about this, but he did that. Yes, it was important that he did that to try to capture the blacks to vote for him. Maybe. Yeah. But after that, you're the president right now. And so we're going to expect and take you up on those points.
Do you have those?
Yes, I do have some. I know some of them. Yeah.
Okay. Can you please tell us maybe 2 or 3 of those points that he has promised the black community?
He had about 10 of them, and of course, one of them is about education. Although the blacks had they felt insulted by some of the slogans during campaign, they said Africans, African Americans, what do you have to lose?
Right.
It's just a matter of, doing this over and over, and folks leave. So they had a choice, and they still have a choice, in life. So we cannot feel like, oh, there is nothing to lose, or that they are perpetually in poverty, crime-ridden neighborhoods. Not every African American, global African lives in that way. But having said that, he decided to do something about it. So folks can see things more in a negative way, but you can also decide to turn things that are negative into opportunities for growth. Those challenges. So one of the things he talked about was to have a great education through school choice. All right, I talked about that. It could be a positive thing, but it could also be seen as a negative thing where the public institutions are not doing quite well, and we're focusing on the charter schools and all that, privatize it, and folks need to pay a whole lot of money to get in there. So it's the way we take it and run with it. Talked about safe communities. He also talked about equal justice under the law. And these have been very troubling issues, of course, and creating jobs. He did mention microloans, and I'm on it. To promote business development, to promote economic development in our black community. So we need to start from home and then be able to expand, of course, to African countries with not just a handout, all right, but to have sustainable development. That's my interest. Where Africa is extremely rich with natural resources, it is the fastest growing continent in terms of the population. So you have a lot of agile population that needs to be trained and put into not just what you may call labor, but entrepreneurs, but human capital to be developed. And so countries moving over, companies moving over to Africa will have the right workforce, all right? And with America trading with Africa with the natural resources, I don't mean the type that we go and buy the things in the raw state with peanuts. And then we come over here and refine them, whether it is oil or gas or any of the resources, and then we send them back and they cannot buy it. I'm talking about a mutually beneficial relationship, mutually respectful relationship. President Trump, having been a businessman, I believe he understands a win-win situation, and I'm looking forward and hoping that he will get into those great relationships.
Okay. We will go into the 10-point plan for the Black America. We'll go into that again because I see some interesting points there. The United States is the 3rd largest donor to you and FPA, which is a United Nations Populations Fund. In 2015, it donated about $75.9 million to that organization. Now, this organization is used to help family planning in Africa. Family planning services in Africa is not just providing contraceptives and and stuff like that. It also helps women who may not have the economic power, children who may be deprived or setting services, maternity issues. The United Population Fund is not necessarily about contraceptives or no abortions, but the president's policies is going to be defunding this organization heavily. Okay, and so obviously that, and if it's the third largest contributor to this organization, and is defunding this project heavily because according to the government, they're saying that some of its operations are against the American anti-abortion laws. Now, should we Africans say, okay, here comes the end of the world? Should we see as a negative situation with Americans and start running helter skelter, or should we seize it as an opportunity and say, okay, how can we help ourselves and fund our own institutions and help our people? Should we see it that way, or we should press on and lobby for these funds to be given to the UN Populations Fund?
Well, while the U.S. is the most powerful nation in the world, as folks would like to describe it, and as you mentioned, there are some things we need to look at, and I can go into details with that, but we don't need to. We need to calibrate. But if the U.S. decides not to fund certain programs, which is because, the United Nations, right, and then because it's against the law, the anti-abortion law. I believe the United Nations has argued against that because it's been believed to support the one-child policy in China, and also forced sanitation of the women and abortion and issues like that, or deciding if the child, or if you're pregnant and the child is a girl and you want a boy, that you will abort, stuff like that. But the United Nations has argued that that is not the truth. I do understand from the perspective of the U.S., but at the same time, it becomes an opportunity. Okay? Yeah. Already, I believe, $190 million have been raised as part of this anti-global gap rule, fund.
By the Dutch government.
Absolutely. And so a few countries and individuals, in fact, I think there is a donor, an anonymous donor that has provided has donated about 50 million. All right, and does not want his or her name to be mentioned. Okay. Maybe that person would not have donated if the U.S. was taking charge. Right. And the Bible says, I like to bring in the Bible because, all right, that's what I believe in. Exactly. If you are a lender, you are a borrower is a slave to the lender. Whoever brings in the most money basically just calls the shot. While personally I am not supporting abortion, and all those kinds of things that are, displacing to God, we know they are wrong. At the same time, we do need to allow women to make the choice of how to handle. We don't want to be imposing everything. There are some issues, some state where the mother's health is affected. We need to consider some of that. But I'm not, I don't know the details about if all of it is used towards abortion. But one thing I do know is about 13% of maternal death in Africa, is a major problem. I've had some friends that get ready to have babies, and because they did not have proper medical care, that results in their death. And so you have these babies that come up without the mother, and stuff. So anything we can do, working in collaboration with other countries to promote health, while I'm not talking about promoting abortion, but to promote family planning and women's health, checking up before things become emergency situation. I believe we should try and work with each other to take care of that.
Absolutely, because the maternity issue, maternity rate, the maternity death rates is maternal mortality rates. I'm sorry, maternal mortality rates situation since 1990 has been declining, and as of the efforts of the organizations on the ground who are helping to provide, like you said, good medical services to women who may be having medical issues during pregnancy and so forth, and also with the collaboration of the international world. And so if the president is threatening to defund it, I think that it won't necessarily help the declination, because we are helping the situation. The situation is we are curbing the situation. So now if you take money from it, then you are going to worsen it. I mean, instead of curbing it, now we are going to leave room for for it to possibly escalate. And the WTO, the World Trade Organization, is according to them, are saying 13% of all maternal deaths are as a result of unsafe abortion. And like you said, nobody is necessarily supporting abortion, right? But where it becomes complicated to the point where the mother's life or the mother or the child's life is at stake, then doctors have to take a decision to save life, and which might result in abortion.
Maybe.
Right. And so to use that to say that some of the UNFP services, okay, the United Nations Population Fund, some of their operations, which includes helping women when they have to abortion and all that, is against the American government abortion laws. And so as a result, you're going to defund that organization in helping a good cause. We don't necessarily think it's the right cause, the right direction to go. And so, like you said, it might be the opportunity for Africans to look within ourselves and say, hey, what can we do to help our own people? Because it is a life and death issue.
It is. It is a life and death issue. But like you mentioned, World Health Organization, WHO, is very concerned about global health. And global health, I can mention, we may be in this part of the world and we may say, oh, we are in a developed society. And then we have the developing society, that's their problem. But it's not. Their problem is also our problem.
Right.
And I'm thankful to God that the USA has been quite involved. Who said, somebody had said, I can't remember his name, but I think it's one of the generals, that it is more expensive to spend on war rather than spend on humanitarian services. All right. While I personally do not support abortion, cutting down funding on women's health is not something that we should encourage. Exactly. We should work together. Now, we see certain things are sin, okay, and I want to bring that in. But the focus is God gives us the ability. We're going to say this is wrong, this is right. Choose the righteous path, that you may live. You choose the negative part or the wrong part, it comes with that. That education is very important for us to understand. But God himself does not even force us. Right. All right. God doesn't force us. And God, Jesus is a gentleman. All right. But he says, I have presented before you life and death. I ask you to choose life that you may live. Right. All right. So to begin to, unless you do this, you are not, right. That's an issue. Right. So I would like us to encourage people that choose life that you may live, rather than impose upon people, which God does not do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that input. When we go, if you're listening, we were talking about Donald Trump's first 100 days and its impact on global Africa. Is it a situation where we should all be running helter-skelter because some of his decisions or his executive orders might not be popular or might not be in favor of the global continent of Africa? Should we all be worried? or should we take look at it as a time and an opportunity where we say, okay, we can stand up for ourselves, we can defend ourselves, we can provide for ourselves. We have the human capital, we have the human resources and the natural resources, to improve on our own situation, improve on our own people, and help our communities. So these are some of the things, these are the conversations that we want to have, and we encourage you to join in the conversation. If you're listening if you're watching us watching us on Facebook Live, please share the feed so our friends can also participate or listen to what we are discussing today. If you have any comments or questions, you can type it and we will read it out. We also have an email where if you have recommendations on how we can improve on our program or help us in any way, you can email us at info.progressiveminds@gmail.com. 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 If you're not in the Chicago downtown and uptown area, you can download the TuneIn app and listen to us live. Alternatively, WGHCFM.org is our website, which you can listen on as well. Our other website, legendtvonline.org, is also functional. You can listen to us that way. The number to ring in if you don't have access to internet, you can ring in 563-999-3221. 563-999-3221. We'll be going for one musical break. When we come back, we'll be attempting to speak with our attorney this evening, who would go into some specific executive orders regarding immigration by the president, what they are, who it affects, and so forth. So please stay logged on to Progressive Minds on WGH 98.3 FM. This is your host, Senna. You also call me Alinko. We shall be right back. Hello, welcome back to the Progressive Mind Show on WGHC 98.3 FM. This is your host, Alinko. You also call me Senna. The two of them are fine. Anyone you say, I would respond to it. Before we went on that musical break, we said we're going to speak to our attorney, Melanie Dennis, who is right here. I think he's online. We have attorney Dennis online.
Good evening, every listener.
Oh, hey, attorney Melanie, how are you today?
I'm doing beautifully. Thank you for asking me.
You're welcome. So, attorney Melanie Dennis is a CEO of transaction. She's a CEO of her law firm. She's also a transactional law compliance lawyer. She's a certified entertainment arts sports agent, and so she is certified attorney. We are talking to the right person. She would give us some specific immigration executive orders that the president has enacted, what they are, who they affect, and should we even worry about some of them. So, Melanie, please go ahead and tell us specifically some of the executive orders that the president has given regarding immigration.
Okay. Well, since President Donald Trump has been in office, he has enacted, shall I say, a host of executive orders. Now, when it comes to immigration issues, there are three main executive orders that he did issue during his tenure so far.
Okay.
The first one, it's the Enhancing Public Safety in the Interior of the United States executive order. And what that executive order does, it basically strips the federal government from granting money to so-called sanctuary cities. I'm not sure if your listeners are familiar with that. I'm sure they are. There are several cities within the United States that grant sanctuary status to undocumented immigrants. In addition to that, under the executive order, the Secretary of Homeland Security was ordered to actually hire 10,000 immigration officers, and that has been playing out on the news a lot. It also authorized the Secretary of Homeland Security to create a list of crimes that were committed or are being committed by undocumented immigrants. And it also grants a lot of power to the Homeland Security Office. It calls on local and your state police officials to either detain or apprehend people who are here, according to them, illegally. Now, that's just one executive order that everyone needs to understand. That one is still in effect. So far, there has not been any amendments to that particular executive order. So right now, it stands as it is. Now, the second executive order, that one is, I'm sure everyone is familiar with that. That's the building of the wall executive order, where President Trump, during his campaign trail, he promised to annex America from Mexico because allegedly there were a lot of undocumented immigrants coming from Mexico illegally and accused of committing crimes as well. Basically, the Secretary of Homeland Security, who's in charge of a lot of immigration issues, it gives the Secretary a lot of power. It gives the Secretary power to end the abuse of what was called the parole and asylum provisions, which the President and his cabinet members believe that it complicated trying to remove undocumented immigrants. Okay. Also, under this order, it also authorizes them to hire at least thousands. I want to say 4,000 to 5,000 more Border Patrol agents, and hold almost kind of like a concentration camp. I hate to use that term for lack of a better word, but to hold them near the Mexican border once they are apprehended, and to end what used to be capture and release protocols. Now, when they're captured, they cannot any longer release them. They have to detain them.
Wow.
The main one that the executive order that everyone's been talking about. Now, that one basically banned initially 7 countries, 7 citizens from 7 different countries from coming to America, and that was a temporary ban. Basically, countries Iran, Sudan, Yemen, Libya, Somalia, and Saudi Arabia was one of them as well. 7, I think I mentioned 7. Saudi Arabia is no longer on that list. It's only 6. And basically, under that executive order, what the president and his cabinet members basically alleged was because of actions of terrorism on American soil, they wanted to put a stop to that from people from countries that are known allegedly to have terrorism activities, widespread terrorism activities.
Okay.
Now, right now, as a matter of fact, yesterday, this executive order has gone through various courts. What your viewers, your listeners need to understand is, in our country, we have what's called a federalist type of system, meaning we have governments and we have courts, courts upon courts, basically. We have a state government, we have federal governments. At the court level, you have what's called trial courts. That's where causes of actions are normally first put into the court system. Now, if either party, whether a plaintiff or defendant, isn't happy with their case, then it goes to the next level, which is the Court of Appeals level. And you have that at state and federal levels. And then if they're not happy at the appellate level, then it goes to the Supreme Court level. And you have Supreme Courts in both the state level and the federal level. Now, when it comes to President Trump's ban of citizens from these 6 countries, okay, not the 7 anymore, not Saudi Arabia. When it comes to the ban on immigrants coming from these countries, as well as the ban on the refugees coming from these various countries, they put a ban on it initially under the executive order for, I believe, 90 days. 90 days for the 6 countries, 7 at first. And then basically for the refugees, they put a ban on it for 120 days. Now, again, this has gone to another federal court. A lot of courts at the appellate level and the lower trial court level have knocked it down. And basically, they are alleging, and it looks good for the U.S. Supreme Court to kind of back them behind that, because once it goes to the federal level and the appellate level, and it's against a certain party, the U.S. Supreme Court more times than often sides with their own federal courts, okay, because that's all part of the federal system. Okay. Yesterday, it went to another federal appeals court, and basically, based upon President Trump's revised ban. Now, remember, his revised ban implemented taking away Saudi Arabia out of the equation,
okay, Melody,
and continuing to have the 6 various countries still on the list.
Okay, can you? Yes, Melody. Okay, I wanted to ask you, if you were still on the line, there is this rumor that part of the executive immigration executive order that he gave, there's a clause in there that prohibits green card holders from owning businesses in this country. Do you know much on that?
Nate, that is absolutely incorrect. That is incorrect. Okay. There is nothing in the executive order whatsoever that even mentions anything about green card holders not owning businesses. As a matter of fact, under that same executive order, it's 3 different important things your listeners need to understand. the courts are alleging, and the attorneys who are handling these cases for these citizens from these various countries, basically they're saying that it violates the First Amendment, which is the freedom of religion clause. Okay, that's the First Amendment, and then it violates the Fifth Amendment, which is the right to not to incriminate yourself when you're undergoing a criminal legal matter. Okay?
Okay.
And then the 14th Amendment, which is due process and equal protection under the law. Now, with all three of those amendments being alleged as being violated, also I want to stress under, I believe, the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment also has a clause that protects citizenship rights. Okay?
Okay.
Now, let your viewers know that if they have any questions concerning their citizenship rights, whether they can own a business, if they have a green card, I would suggest that they contact the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. They can answer any questions that they have when it comes to citizenship and immigration issues.
Okay.
Now, again, under Trump's executive order, there is nothing in that order that prohibits green card holders from not owning businesses. As a matter of fact, it is illegal to prohibit them from owning a business. They have a right to own a business just like anyone, just like an American citizen.
Okay. Now, let me ask you the next question. There are some students who have come here, H2 student visa holders, and then other diplomats or other individuals who have traveled on certain types of visas that allows them to stay here for a number of days. Some of them may have overstayed, but need to continue with some important projects here in this country. Now, should these people at all worry about some of this? I mean, with this new immigration executive order, should they be worried about their status, whether they will be hunted down and deported back home? Should they have any cause to worry?
Well, no. Well, what I would say is, if they do have a visa, okay, remember there's two types of visas that they can get. One that allows them to be here on a temporary basis under the assertion that they do not plan to live here permanently. And then there's the other visa, which allows them to travel from another country and to live here permanently. So if they're here under a visa and the visa has expired, I would try to get in touch with the immigration services to try to see what they can do to try to help them out, whether to extend their visa or whatever else. But as far as being sent back home, remember, when it comes to any law, that have rules and regulations, temporary means temporary, and permanent means permanent. So if the temporary visa is expiring, then I would try to see if I could get it renewed. Even if you're a student or if you're here on a work visa, just try to keep it up to date.
Okay, Melanie, Dr. King wanted to ask you a question.
Well, not necessarily asking a question, but to piggyback from what Melanie had talked about. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Dr. King. How are you?
Very well, thank you. There is actually an encouragement in promoting business, startup, moving away from those who actually have green card or visas to stay in the country. There is actually a discussion about those from outside the U.S., encouraging them to come in if they have maybe, about $500,000 or so to invest in U.S. economy. So they can come in and invest. But there is also a downside to it. There's been a discussion about paying to buy visa, or then the poor people may not like be able to get it. But it is actually encouraging self-employment, creation of jobs. And I believe Trump, as a businessman, is really encouraging that because that's what is going to spur American economy. So there is an encouragement there. Now, on the F1 visa or J1 visas that people are coming to study, there are different specifications, and I also know there are still changes in the law on that. But the impact on it is about 40% currently down of international students. All right? When we are talking about globalization, we know that American market is saturated. All right? We can't just focus on selling to the people that are living in this country, whether it is in education, economy, and all that. But universities that have been very dependent on international students are really crying because there is a decrease, about 40% decrease in enrollment. And that's something that personally I do know needs to be reconsidered if we are really trying to promote the economy of U.S. and then enrollment is down. That's a concern for universities. Now, the government does not want to fund entirely education, and then educational institutions are looking for ways to bring in money from outside the country. That is a major consideration. Right. From Chicago State University, of course, we are looking for international students to boost. Having known what has happened in our state with the budget impasse, we need to find, yes, it's a problem, but I basically see many of these problems as challenges that you can use to step up, all right? We realize that we cannot depend on the federal government or on the state, so we need to find other sources of funding. And international students bring in quite a bit of money to the country, and this includes, of course, the global African, as well. So what we need to do is to support and encourage that, because we can try to say we want to create jobs, but we are stopping students from coming and enrolling in the universities, running into financial crisis. So for Chicago State, of course, we're encouraging people come register. International studies, you need it, because in this age of globalization, you need to be able to understand what is happening in the rest of the world, understand other culture. You do not need to believe in those cultures, but you do have to respect them, so we can live in a mutually respectful society.
Absolutely. And so back to Melanie, just wrap it up for us in 30 seconds or so, if you may. So the immigration the executive laws, immigration executive orders are still in effect, but so the question is in two folds. Is it still in effect? And secondly, you mentioned something about the courts, or the Supreme Courts are fighting it. So is it still in effect, but they are looking at it from the Supreme Court, and should we hope that it will be resolved soon?
Nate, let me be quite honest with you. When it comes to our court systems in America, it's not an overnight thing. Sometimes it could take years, especially when you have a system where, say, for example, a case is tried at the trial court level and then it goes to the appellate court. The second level, the appellate court can knock it back down to the trial court level, and it starts all over again. So right now, it's past the first prong, which is the trial court level. It's at the second prong, which is the appeals court level. Now, it's not at the Supreme Court yet, because it's still in that middle ground. It's still in between, okay? Right now, throughout the entire United States, various federal courts, okay, have knocked down. Not one federal court has approved his executive order, because it said when you get near the Constitution and there's any inkling of a violation of a person's constitutional rights, and again, those constitutional rights that they're asserting are under the First Amendment. Remember, religion clause, because courts are saying that it's a Muslim ban. But President Trump's people are saying that it's not. It's just to protect the United States from terrorism. Again,
Okay, so but yeah, right.
14th and the Fifth Amendment. So it's not at the U.S. Supreme Court level yet.
Okay.
It's still at the federal courts level. But right now, yesterday, like I said, another federal court, I can't remember where it's at, but it's a major federal court. And they just heard the case on his revised executive order.
Okay.
And we just have to wait and see.
Okay.
Now,
But in the meantime, in the meantime though, Melanie, would the executive order is in full force? That's correct, right?
It's I'm not going to say it's still in full force. What I am going to say is the courts have put a hold on it as far as restricting people from coming to these countries.
Okay. All right. I think we will leave it as that. On that note, we know that Attorney Melanie Dennis is also a human rights activist, and so she's very passionate about these topics. And
if I can say one more thing, Nate, okay?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
When it comes to human rights and when it comes to even this country was founded on immigrants, if we all remember that.
Yeah.
This country was founded on immigrants, it's based upon immigrants, it was built by immigrants. The only non-immigrants are the Native Americans. So we have to remember that regardless of what President Trump and his cabinet members issue to the American people and the global community as a whole, in our system of government, we have checks and balances. So just because he issues an executive order does not mean it necessarily has to remain law, as we are now all seeing. Okay? Because once he issued the executive order, we thought it was the law of the land, and everyone was in up in arms about it. But as we also noted, that it didn't stand because there is a system of check and balances. You have his side of branch of government, which is the executive branch. You have the judicial side of government, which is the court, which we've been talking about tonight.
Okay.
And then you have the legislative branch, which are your state legislators and your U.S. congressmen and congresswomen and House of Representatives. All of these three different branches check and balance each other.
Okay.
Because, again, it is the Constitution put those safeguards into place. So understand, I'm saying this to say, just because he issued an executive order does not mean it will stand, because now the judicial branch is checking his executive branch.
Absolutely.
And if it gets to the U.S. Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court says, no, we agree with all the lower court levels, it's unconstitutional, it is racist, is targeting a group of people of a certain race and their religion, and it'll get tossed out. So right now, that executive order is in a sense on hold. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Okay. We are okay. Thank you so much. We'll have to take one musical break before we come back and continue the program. And we were speaking with Attorney Melanie Dennis. She was giving us some of the actually really breaking it down in terms of the executive orders that the president has taken regarding immigration. She also related it to how it affects some of the minority groups in this country, and also enlightened us a little bit about the executive branches of this government and how the government institutions work hand in hand to pass laws and make sure and put laws in effect. And so we also asked her a few questions, and which she did her best to answer for us. We are so thankful for Attorney Melanie Dennis for that great input and your contribution to our program tonight. We'll know that you'll be back here again to discuss other topics. Listeners, please stay logged on. We are still talking President Trump's first days and its impact on global Africa with our honorable guest here, Dr. Margaret King. And we'll be going for one short break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Please share the feed if you're watching us live on Facebook, so our friends can also participate or listen to what we're discussing today. Please stay logged on. We shall be right back. This is your host, Alinko. You also call me Senna. We will be right back.
Yeah, the segment is done for tonight.
If she wants to stay on, if she wants to stay on this one.
Okay.
Yeah. You're doing good too.
That's true.
When we come back, we'll talk about his budget cut to it's more budget cut, you know, to USD, which helps with
That sounds good. We'll bring you back on again. That's very necessary. Thank you very much for your time. All right. Good night.
Hello, listeners. You're welcome back to the Progressive Mind Show on WGHC 98.3 FM. This is your host, Senna. You call me Alinko. We are here discussing President Trump's first 100 days in office and its impact on global Africa. If you were here before we went on break, we just spoke to Attorney Melanie Dennis, who gave us some of the specific laws in terms of the immigration executive orders and its impact, what it means, and so forth. Our guest for tonight's program is the Honorable Dr. Margaret King. She is also the founder of the Global Institute of Sustainable Development. I know we have been talking about Trump's executive orders and how it impacts global Africa and how we can see it as an opportunity. I wanted us to, there's something that came to mind which I want listeners to know, is that you personally helped in a project that enhanced the community. What Hyde Park, the Hyde Park community it is.
Oh yes.
Please tell us about that story, because I think it's very it's a milestone in your career as an African who had migrated here and have done well for yourself, and helping to develop some of the communities in this country is something that we need to share. So please tell us a story.
Well, as a planner, an urban planner, with a focus on economic development, and we do community planning, and we take the same local economic development global as well in our international development consulting piece. We've worked on a lot of projects. I mean, one of the ones we worked on was in Hyde Park, Kenwood area. And we were asked to do an economic leakage analysis and a space analysis quite a few years ago, looking at where some of their money was going, what businesses needed to be attracted. And we got some grants and we're able to work on that. We also worked on the dichotomy between the East Hyde Park, what was needed and how the money sort of just flew in there or what went out. So the idea is to say what type of businesses should this community attract? Because if you don't have those businesses and you have the residents, they're going to go somewhere else to buy those goods. And so we made those recommendations. We know, of course, the city of Chicago in the planning department, we did some work in collaboration with them. You have to have the plan, the whole city plan, and then be able to target the different neighborhoods. So we were able to make some recommendations of the economic leakages, absentee landlords, and what about the spaces, traffic counts. And so we did all that, and then we're able to make some recommendations as to some type of businesses they needed to attract. And also working on the traffic issue.
Right, and this was how many years ago?
Oh, that was, let's see, that was early, somewhere around 92, yeah.
Okay. And you've obviously seen the economic development of that area.
It's just beautiful when you see, of course, it's part of the development of University of Chicago, around there. So we love it when we see those businesses that we suggested being attracted and actually the implementation part. As a planner, of course, your main phase is planning it and you see it coming up in many years, so you do a strategic plan. But the implementation, when it comes up, it's wonderful. Now, that's one of the reasons that motivated us for establishing the Global Institute at Chicago State University to promote university community partnership, because we believe a great academic citadel like that should be able to influence the immediate community. I was also involved in the project at UIC, University of Illinois Chicago, working through QA, the Center for Urban Economic Development. And we got a lot of grants, part of interviewing the public housing to be able to move and expand so that the university can have an impact with its immediate community. So we see that happening, and we are working with the Global Institute and the great things that are happening at Chicago State University. We just have a new interim president who had been the dean, interim president Rachel Lindsay, fabulous professional, academic professional, and visionary. So we see great things coming at Chicago State University, and we're looking at the university working with the communities. And that's the main focus of the Global Institute, to transform the surrounding communities. And so we plead with community members to look more in partnership. And many of them are really doing it. And I won't sit here to begin to mention names because I will forget a lot. And I'll get somebody mad. But we've got some great people in the community partnering with us, working with the immediate community, but also with our global impact. Because our interest is, while you are working locally, you need to think globally. All right? You cannot continue to rob Peter to pay Paul. All right? If you have a business and you're only selling to people within the neighborhood, you're not really going to go too far. But when you get regional and international, then you know you're going to do a lot better.
Absolutely. Well, we'll come back to how the president's policies has directly impacted your organization. Listeners, we're going to open the phone lines, and it's 773-942-7167. Yes. 773-942-7167. If you want to ring in and ask Dr. Quinn a question or contribute to what we're saying, what the topic we're discussing this evening, you are most welcome to do so. 773-942-7167. Please feel free to call into the program to contribute. Now, Dr. King, I know that you organized a summit 2 weeks ago. And we also know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that some time ago you organized something similar and you pulled in about 200 first ladies from across Africa. Or was that not the case? Were they business women that came here, or you were first ladies, according to my research?
Oh, we're working on the First Ladies.
Okay.
So that's a program that, of course, it's upcoming
Okay.
soon.
Okay.
But when the Global Institute was launched, we brought different countries. We've been working with ambassadors from several countries.
Okay.
We were able to have United
Arab Emirates?
Africa. No,
Okay.
actually, African Union ambassador
Okay.
with the entourage that were here. So we had quite a few countries
Okay.
that were here to support with the Global Institute, because the Global Institute has Africa Center,
Okay.
and the Africa Center was also launched. The idea is to promote information about Africa, to promote trade and educational collaboration between the U.S. and Africa. Part of the one that you may be talking about also related to during Clinton's administration,
Okay.
when we had the National Summit on Africa. And we was invited to be in Washington, D.C., and we worked with delegates from all 50 states and all heads of states in Africa. We helped to write the white paper based on interviews and talking with different community leaders and representatives and delegates to be able to gather information. Of course, the white paper assisted with the passing of the AGOA bill.
Agua bill
Absolutely.
by Bill Clinton.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, some of your delegates were not able to attend this past conference because of visa issues, and again because of the executive order. And that is why I wanted to go into the details, because if the executive immigration order is targeting certain countries, as she mentioned, which we already know, Nigeria is not part of it.
No, it's not.
Okay. Now, this immigration law is not also targeting necessarily people who are just coming here to visit,
Right.
especially if they are not within the six countries. So how then did his, how they did, because they just didn't lose, they weren't denied the visas just because their papers were not in order, but it was as a direct result of this executive order.
Well, I'm not going to mention the details and
Okay.
names, but we had a governor with this team that was going to be visiting. Because at the Global Institute, part of the things we do is professional development, short-term professional development. We can do it face-to-face where the international dignitaries come here. And we train them for a short period of time on specific skills. This summit that was April 27 to 29, we focused on 4 areas. One area was using GIS, that's Geographic Information System, to plan a sustainable community. All right? And they were very excited about that. But unfortunately, they could not come. The other one was entrepreneurship development and focusing on specific areas on using the social media as a marketing tool,
Okay.
and also investing in Africa.
Okay.
How do you find funding for projects, sustainable development projects?
Right.
When we talk about we are interested in sustainability, because we do not want people to get into projects that are not self-sustaining,
Right.
or also in enjoying all the things that we have and then we forget about future generations. Yes. So
Okay.
we also had agriculture, which we really believe agriculture, a country that cannot feed itself, that's a problem. We can't sit down and be exporting food. Africa has a lot of land, not like the U.S. where we have certain seasons, even in Chicago area. All right, like 3-4 months, of no snow, of good weather. We still plant in Illinois or the Midwest, and we have food. All right, lots of cross-breeding and technology and research. That's why we bring these professionals to learn and take the knowledge and go back. So we still did the 4 workshops, but many of them that we were expecting, those dignitaries were not able to come because of visa delays.
Okay.
And, part of it, as Melanie mentioned, They're really tightening it up. As a matter of fact, we talked about a budget cut. I think it's about 30% budget cut, to USAID. All right.
Yeah.
The International Development Agency.
Right.
The USA. So.
Right.
That's a problem that supports with these types of development. As a matter of fact, last year I went to Abuja visiting with them because we had sent a grant to support Nigeria. To them seems to be, like I would say, the giant way where these pilot projects are done, and if it is successful in Nigeria, it can be replicated in African countries. And so we went and met with them, but there wasn't quite a bit of collaboration in terms of the grant. So we're still hoping that something will happen, because it's better that we collaborate with this development rather than spending a whole lot on war.
Absolutely. All right, listeners, we're still talking Trump's first 100 days in office and its impact, his policies and executive orders, and its impact on global Africa. We have in our studio Honorable Dr. Margaret King, who is also a professor at the Chicago State University. We would be taking one musical break. When we come back, the phone lines is still open. It's 773-942-7167. 773-942-7167. You can ring and ask a question and contribute to our show. So in the meantime, please hold on to the call. We are going to take one musical break. When we come back, we'll continue with our conversation. But it's okay.
Yeah. No, because I wanted to say something.
Hello, lovely listeners. You're welcome back to the Progressive Mind Show on WGHC 98.3 FM. And we are talking President Trump's first 100 days and its impact on global Africa. We have in our studios Dr. Margaret King, who is walking us through this interesting topic. We also, during the show, we also had attorney Melanie Dennis, who also broke down some of the executive orders, what it means, and the fact that people should not panic in terms of regarding people, especially people who have green cards, and the rumors flying around. Do not worry about those rumors, because the laws does not have anything to do with you. Before we continue our conversation, I'd like to remind our listeners that we need your contributions, we need your donations to help keep this place running, and also to support the other organizations that we contribute to. And so we encourage you to visit our Facebook page. You would find the GoFundMe link there. Click on it and then make your token donations to us. You can also visit our website, wghcfm.org, and make your contributions there. The phone lines are open. It's 773-942-7167. We have a few minutes to wrap up tonight's program, and we are so thankful that you have stayed with us throughout the show to make it a success. Dr. King, before we went on break, we were talking about how some of these immigration laws indirectly or directly affected your global institution programs with regards to some of your dignitaries traveling from Africa coming over. And they didn't make it, but the program was a success, very much so. And I was there. Part of it was the discussion of the brain drain to brain gain, which was awesome. And we, like you said, we're going to be having more of those discussions.
Absolutely.
We also, during your show, during the event, we also discovered Miss Africa, Miss America.
Mrs. Black America.
Mrs. Black America.
Dr. Caroline
Anderson.
Yes.
Oh my God, phenomenal woman.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, she'll be coming here. She'll be coming here. We are going to have her here.
Okay.
Now let's go into our topic for this evening, and the Secretary General for the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, if I mentioned the name correctly, he actually said that East Africa is presently facing the world's most humanitarian crisis in 70 years. He said nearly 60 million people in South Sudan, Somalia, Nigeria are at risk of dying of hunger. The fiscal year 2018 budget plans to reduce funding to the Department of the State and U.S. Agency for International Development by 28%. And these are the organizations that fund programs such as yours as exactly. And he's saying that in February he said that the UN Secretary said that we need $4.4 billion, to help the widespread hunger in Yemen, Nigeria, Somalia, and South Sudan. 4.4 billion, and the U.S. is planning on cutting their funding to 28%, which means there's going to be dramatic effect on these East African countries. Again, the other project that is going to be cut, that's going to suffer a cut, is the Emergency Refugee Migration Assistance Account. The emergency refugee assistance account is basically an organization that helps displaced people in the South Sudan area, the Ethiopia, Kenya, Sudan, and Uganda. Now, these are big organizations that are going to suffer big cuts. Not even forgetting the Bureau of Food Security. That is also, the Bureau of Food Security is also going to suffer a 67.8% cut. Okay, these are huge cuts to programs that help some of the vulnerable people in Africa. It is a challenge. What can we do?
It is a challenge. What can we do? Challenges. I had a friend that talked so much about, I believe it was Milton Friedman from University of Chicago, an economist, that talked about these types of crises They provide avenue
Okay.
for looking for a way to solve them. There are opportunities that will create solutions. So, as bad as it sounds, I don't want to go into all the statistics and the percentages of what that would do. There is African Union Agenda 2063. All right, a plan that encourages African development by Africans.
Okay.
All right? So, and I love that approach because Africans, we cannot sit down and expect others to come do for us what we cannot do ourselves. The cuts, of course, will negatively, very adversely impact the lives of the people. But it is also an opportunity for us to say we've been receiving. That's why I talk about AIDS. Africa, we should not be focusing on AIDS. All right? We have great minds. All right, many of us come over here, and as we're talking about economic development, community planning, sustainable development, we find ourselves doing it all over the world. We have so many attorneys, we have so many engineers, we have so many medical doctors, all right? But we have the shortest of all of these professionals in Africa. So it's about time for us to use this approach and say, yes, President Trump, we want to partner with you and work to develop Africa. If this thing is a little bit transitional so that you have cushioning to fall back on, that would be wonderful. But Africans, we need to step up. All right. You know, many of our dignitaries from Africa come over to the U.S., many of the events that we hold, and they're talking about, oh, the diaspora Africans come back. As a matter of fact, African Union established the 6th zone, regional zone. And we have the East and the West, and all that. But we have the diaspora zone. Africans, and I call global Africa, whether we were born in the continent or we were born outside, whether we the diaspora Africans, or whether you came because you were forced to, or you came voluntarily or involuntarily, no matter that, whatever the issue is, we have a responsibility to help support sustainable development in Africa. All right, we have a lot of drought issues in East Africa. That's part of the problems, with agriculture. But we come here, we have great people, we study agriculture, we look at all these research that are done, and to be able to have America has food. Now we want to be able to take this knowledge and do it in Africa. Like I mentioned earlier, we only have about a few months, but we are able to cultivate where we live. In Africa, we are so blessed with the land. We are blessed with the seasons, right? And so we can actually cultivate all year round. Now that's what we need to focus on. If we cannot feed our people, we have a problem. So let's encourage even our dignitaries back home in Africa to encourage the diaspora Africans to work together and join in. And based on my work with the Global Institute, or whether it's Women for African Development, an organization that we have with the women that are very excited, and these are not only African women. We have different types of people who are excited and interested in helping Africa. But the problem is, once you go, I don't know, someone feels threatened about their position or whatever, we just want to be able to help. All right, and I know we have great resources that we can help. So when the aids are not coming, aids could be crippling. And this might sound controversial, but aids can be crippling to Africans. All right, so now that that funding is not going to come anymore, we need to turn around and say, all right, we have this land. Let's promote everybody having a socially re-engineered mind. Because young people finish from college, they don't want to go back to the rural area, right? They want to go to the city. And so you have rural-urban migration, and you are in the city. The city cannot even provide services for those who are dwelling there. Records already show that over about 75% of the population would be urbanized. All right. So what happens if we all move to urban and then we don't have the rural dwellers to provide food for us? We need to re-socially engineer our minds so that young people know this is important. I understand in Akwa Ibom, Nigeria, and with many other governors, the focus is on agriculture. All right, they're really encouraging the young people, and we want to be able to work with them. If we can send them here, there's money. All right, and we can train the young people, and they go back and help us with agriculture. These are the things that need to be done. With the drought, there is irrigation. All right, we can dig down. Many people are having boreholes. We can use that as well for agriculture.
Absolutely.
So there are humanitarian issues, but there are also opportunity for us to be able to be independent rather than be dependent on another country, and the aid will come in and will cripple us rather than us getting up and do something for ourselves, and we can. So that's the support area that I would really encourage, that we need to step up. Also encourage diaspora Africans, when they come in there, let them work with you. Don't make them feel threatened, about your positions, because, together we stand.
Right.
Divided, we fall.
Absolutely. Well, that was well said, and we really appreciate that input. What it means is that we have to improve on the agricultural mechanism in
Absolutely.
Africa, because the basic thing that we need is food, right?
That
food
is
and
food.
security.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even right here in the U.S., right in my department at Chicago State University, we have faculty that are working on food insecurity.
Okay.
All right. And my daughter also studying, chemistry and biochem and all of that, looks at the type of food that we eat and how that impacts us, our bodies negatively. So we have all of these diseases because of processed and chemically, processed food that we are eating here.
Right.
One of my students is doing a thesis on that genetically modified food, the negative impact it has on the body. So right here in the U.S., in our black communities, we have food deserts. All right, we have food insecurity, and you have places that you can't find like fresh fruit. But there is a big movement. One of the ones, when you were at our event, you saw Dr. McFarland was presenting. There's a big thing about urban agriculture, promoting that. And so that is being taught in the university, to re-engineer the minds of young people, the older ones, whatever space in urban agriculture. We don't need to go to Kankakee or, some rural area somewhere. Right where you have those spaces, turn those into absolutely
right.
making food. And they have these community gardens, and they also have what you call the food hubs, healthy food hubs. Rather than going on processed food, they bring this food in from the gardens, and folks and I've been there and I buy. They're very affordable, but they're organic,
right.
and you eat and you enjoy it because it's good. So if it is happening in the developed world, how much more, in our developing economy,
right.
where we really need to buy this food.
Yeah.
And another thing about it, I want to mention President Obama. He had the YALI program, that Young African Leaders Initiative,
right.
that we call, I believe, the Mandela Fellows, that come here every year. I'm not sure at this point, with all this budget cut,
right.
What's going to happen with that. So you're
Okay.
good as you can be, as good
absolutely.
as good as
absolutely.
mine. Yeah.
Dr. Margaret has a lot of information. She really knows what the African continent needs and how we can help ourselves and be self-sufficient, so that regardless of what international policies may be, we can be sustainable with our own initiatives. And so that is what it is for tonight. Your last word, so our time is up, is 1 minute past 10. Your last advice. You said you had an advice for the president.
President Trump.
Yes.
He's coming in as a non-traditional president, and we ask for change. It reminds me of when the children of Israel asked for a king. All right, God gave them. So God has a purpose in everything we do. We need to look unto God. Also, what is good for us here in this country is to focus on the things we need to do. Focus and trust God. At some point, we are becoming a lot more materialistic. But we need to focus on God, the giver of life. And I believe in absolute truth. Most people don't, think about that. Jesus is the way. We commit our lives unto him. He said, if my people that are called by my name will humble themselves and cry unto me, he said, I will come and hear you. Our need is not to focus on the presidents and the government to provide this. God is our provider. And when we go to him in the name of Jesus and surrender our lives unto him, as he said, choose life that you may live. It's very simply, confessing our sins and asking him, Lord, forgive and take this over. He does a better job.
Right.
And so for our president, I just want to remind him that campaign talk is different from when you become the president.
Right.
When you become the president of the most powerful nation in the world, arguably, we can say that your words will impact other nations, not only the global Africa, it will impact, So when we say NATO is absolute, and then the next minute we turn around and say, okay, that was not all. President Obama is not an American. We say he's an African. Then we change that, So once we become, that's campaign, trying to get the votes. But once you become the president, we need to be cognizant of the things we say. Okay. Another thing that I would also advise, I think Melanie touched on it, there are checks and balances. Yeah. So, we can talk more about this.
Yes,
but let's work together and make the place peaceful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I know we will be here again. Next week is Mother's Day. And I usually like to keep my listeners in suspense, but this time I can't. It's Mother's Day and I can't. And next week we are dedicated it for mothers. So please tune in. It's going to be wonderful. Dr. King will be joining us so we can talk about motherhood and so forth. If your mother has... obviously, our mothers mean a lot to us. You call us and let's share our life stories with our mothers and so forth. So we have also soon come to the end of our program tonight. We discussed President Trump's first 100 days and its impact on Africa, on global Africa. Well, we don't see it as a challenge, regardless of, we don't see it as a problem, regardless of the policies and executive orders that the president would come up. We would want to see it if it's not pro-Africa or if it's not necessarily benefiting Africa. That's fine. Whatever it is, we want to see it as an opportunity to grow our own, to improve on what we have, to find the ingenuity that has been embedded in us that we have not used or that has been laying untapped for all these years. There is so much human resources, so much natural resources that we can look within ourselves and start improving our own community, and our own society, and our own story. So it is not the end of the world, whatever the decision or the orders are. We know that Africa has more than it takes to improve on our situation. So we thank you so much for our listeners for joining us tonight, staying the entire 2 hours for our show. We are hopeful that next week you will join us again. Please remember that in everything you do, keep God first, and also remember that to whom much is given, much is required. This is the Progressive Mind Show on WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station. We shall be here next week. Keep God first. Have a good night.
Thank you, Sammy. I thought that was good.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. Thank you so much.
Oh, I have so much.
From the winter city to the world, this is WGHC 98.3 FM, Chicago's #1 African.